Brewing in Columbus, North Carolina, and we are going to talk to one of the brewers, Autumn, and she's going to answer some questions about her experience and what it's like brewing beer. Hey Autumn, how are you doing?
Hi, good. How's it going?
Good. Thank you so much for agreeing to talk to us. We're really excited to hear a little bit about your experience brewing beer. So we would just love to know how you got into the business.
I was curious about the brewing process. When you try a bunch of different beers, you're like, how do they do this? How do they make all of these different kinds? Kind of just like everybody else, I was curious. I wanted to learn. I knew that there was a program up at AB Tech in Asheville. So I'm in the brewing, distillation, fermentation program up there. And then I got a really good opportunity brewing here, so I just commute back and forth. Dave Erb, he's the head brewer here. He gave me a really great opportunity, kind of my beer sensei, if you will. So yeah, I've just been, this is my first commercial brewing job. It's been super amazing. I like to work hard. I like to get dirty and use my hands, and it just feels really, really fulfilling at the end of the day.
That's great. So you mentioned that you really love hard work. Do you notice that this is a really demanding job physically?
Yes, it is pretty demanding. The hours can be somewhat flexible, but we don't really like make our hours in the day. The beer does that for us. It's a very it's a very in-depth process. So we really just have to take our time with it, but it's really fun, and again, it's just really fulfilling, and yeah, it's kind of my therapy.
So we're going to let Autumn show us what it's like to brew a beer from the very start and walk us through the process of making one of their 8 core beers here at Iron Key Brewing, and she's going to tell us approximately what it takes to put that brew into batch and then put it into the tap where it goes into your glass.
Okay, hey, we're brewing the Locust Lager today. So, you'll follow me. When I come in here in the morning, so alright, beer is grain, hops, yeast, and most importantly, water. No, alcohol is not one of those ingredients that go into beer. The yeast does that guy. So, right here, we have all of our grain. Today, I'll show you some of the grain that we used. This, for example, is a caramel Munich malt. It's very light and biscuity. As you can see, it's already milled up. So it came in whole kernels, and we just milled it up, and it's one of the grains that we grew in the tank today. So today we used about 330 pounds of this grain, and we threw it into both of those kettles in here. So in these kettles, you throw your grain in, and we have a computer system that it's already set to whatever temperature we need the water to be at. It's already set the timers and everything, so it just fills up with water. We let it sit. There's a process called the mashing process. It will sit at a certain temperature. I believe it's 148 degrees for this particular beer. It's usually like that for a lager versus an ale. So the mashing process for this beer is going to take an hour. And every, say, 10 minutes after a 30-minute process, we're going to take gravity readings. And the gravity readings we take throughout the entire process, and basically that's how we know the alcohol by volume that is in your beer. And this one is 5%. So after the mashing process is done in 60 minutes, all this going on, we're recirculating it. We're going to pull the grain up out of our kettles here. And we're gonna dump it into wheelbarrows, and a local farmer is gonna come by and use it for food for his cows. And it's really awesome. And then we're gonna get this up to boil, and then we're gonna add our hops. And I'm gonna show you the hops that we are using today. certain type of hops. It's called Magnum. Hops are really beautiful. This is where you get all of those good bitter flavors in your beer that balance out the sweetness from the malt. So this is a certain type of hops that we are using today. So after our mashing process is done, you do a process called Sparge, again, where you're pulling the grain out, dump it in the wheelbarrows, food for the cows. And then once this gets up to boil, there's different processes in the boil where you are going to add those hops. And after the boil is done, we just do a little whirlpool and a rest, and then we send it on over to these fermenters here. These fermenters, this is where the job really gets done. We add our yeast to these fermenters at the very top. It's a very delicate process. Yeast is a very delicate microorganism, and what it does is it eats all of the enzymes and sugars that are in your beer, and it turns it into alcohol. So yeah, the lager itself, it takes to ferment and age about 2 months. So it's a very delicate beer. Typically lagers are going to take more time than ales to ferment. So yeah.
All right, so we've got the head brewer here at Iron Key, and Mr. Dave. He's going to talk with us a little bit about the process and what he's been doing here so far.
I started brewing about 8 years ago with a friend in Maryland. He moved back to Ohio and I moved down here, and he decided he was opening a brewery up there, and I decided I wanted to open one down here. I helped him get his open up there to begin with, and then we started working on ours down here.
Awesome. So Dave, what's your favorite beer to brew here at the Iron Key Brewery?
So my favorite beer to drink is an IPA, so I love brewing the Big House IPA, but the Sluder Road is another one that we enjoy brewing, and we've brewed a lot of it already. It seems to be very popular.
Very good. Well, we really appreciate you taking some time to talk with us. What do you think is the most difficult thing about brewing your own beer?
So the most important thing when you're brewing beer is sanitation. You can get bad flavors in beer if you don't do proper cleaning. That's the biggest part of brewing, is that you've got to love cleaning. If you don't love cleaning, or at least tolerate it, you're not going to be a good brewer. So delivering beer to the taps is a multi-step process. After we make the beer, which I think Autumn talked to you about earlier, we transfer it into our fermenters, and that's where we add the yeast to it, and that's how it becomes beer. The sugar that's in the wort turns into alcohol, and that becomes beer. From those, we do a single-step transfer into our big serving tanks so that we don't have to mess around with kegs. And then from the serving tanks, it comes over top in the trunk line and gets delivered to our taps. That line's cooled by a glycol chiller and allows us to maintain the temperature of the beer all the way from the cooler to the tap.
With Chris, who is the owner of Iron Key, and we're going to talk a little bit about the really neat story that they have here and about some of their unique history. So tell me a little bit about the building.
Oh, the building itself, the one that we're housed in, is actually the original prison that was finished in construction in 1932. We came in, we did some modifications, but we tried to keep it pretty much original. We wanted to reflect the character of the building and its history. So we did the construction. Took us about a year from when we actually started construction until we completed and opened this past year.
Very cool. So this used to be a prison here in Polk County. Are there some fun stories that you guys try to play off of and really sell up the history of the building?
Well, it's very hard to get any history on this building, since it was a prison, and this was not the only one built in North Carolina. It was actually sanctioned, I believe, for 51 of these buildings to be built across the state. Now, so some of these buildings are still operating as prisons today. So they will not release any blueprints. They will not release a lot of the history. And I understand why. We all understand why. But it's a little difficult. We've gone through, and you can see some of the items hanging on the door or the walls around here, where we found some stories in the old newspapers and the archives. and we frame them and put those up. But other than that, you don't hear very much.
Right, yeah. I guess that makes sense if they want to protect the character and the integrity of the buildings and make sure that nobody is knowing those blueprints too well. That's really funny. So you really got into this naming of the Iron Key and having the building really, the brewery really be about the building itself. So talk about choosing the name Iron Key for the brewery.
Well, we did have a different name at first. We ran into some trademark issues with that. So we sat around and we sort of did the whole drop back and punt thing. And we sat around as the ownership team, the Bundys, Herbs, and us, and talked about different names again. And somebody said something about our Iron Key. And we're like, well, it's already our symbol. And it just sort of fell right in place. So I think the entire ownership team is sort of glad that we ran into trademark issues with the other. So
right.
It's really just a very fitting name and logo.
Very fitting name, very fitting logo. I think it's really neat, and it probably draws people in because they're interested in the story. So tell us about some of your core beers and why you chose to name those beers as you did.
Well, a lot of them are played off of the whole theme of the prison, the conjugal kolsch, the lockup lager, the penitentiary porter, and all of those. But the one that really plays off the history of this is called Saluda Road Pale Ale. Now, there's a reason this building was built here, and it's right next to the highway department. And the chain gangs from here were used to do road work. So they built the Saluda grade, the Highway 176, let's say that, and they used the labor from here to do that. Well, we sort of paid a bit of homage to them in naming it Saluda Road Pale Ale.
Sure.
That's why it's named that.
So Chris mentioned that they're working on having 8 core beers here at Iron Key. We talked about the fun names that they're using. Some of those include the Slammer Wheat, the Saluda Road Pale Ale, the Lockup Lager. A lot of really fun tie-ins to the prison's history here at Iron Key Brewing. So Chris, talk to me a little bit about what people can drink and expect when they come to drink here. And then let me know a little bit about, what can people do if they want to take some beers home?
Okay. Well, in addition to our core beers, we also carry a couple from Acoustic Brewing out of Brevard. I don't know about them or not, but a really good operation up there. We carry their sour and their single track IPA, which we will stop carrying since we've got ours. We also have Urban Orchard, their Sweet English cider. That's a gluten-free option for some people that really can't have the gluten there in a lot of beers. Well, besides that, we do carry a good selection of wines, 5 reds and I believe 5 whites. So we have that option for the wine drinker. And we also do have a crowler machine, not a growler, but a crowler. So basically a crowler is a 32-ounce can, as you can see. We decided to go through this route because this is basically 2 beers. The growlers are 4 beers basically, 64 ounces. Once you open that growler, you're going to lose some of the integrity over time because the oxygen has gotten to the beer. And how many people are really going to sit down and drink 4 beers at one time? So we decided to go with the growler option, which is 2 beers. And basically when you pop the top, you can drink those 2 beers and you're pretty much good to go. We can can any beer that we have. And has been quite popular in fact. We did I think 12, 15 the other night. So it's a good option and it keeps the beer nice and fresh.
A virtual Beer Fest ticket this year and coming with us on this tour of Iron Key Brewing in Columbus. We really want to thank Chris for welcoming us out here and showing us his gorgeous facility. Chris, tell us a little bit more, the final snapshot of what you want people to know about Iron Key Brewing.
Well, main thing I'd really like for people to do is come and experience this. Come and experience the atmosphere and learn a little bit about the history. I mean, even more so than what we're doing here. Come and experience our food. I mean, we've got a guy in our kitchen. His name's Adam Moore. and he has really done great things within our kitchen. I'm really proud of the product we put out. So it's one of the fewer breweries that actually serve a full menu, and he does a fantastic job with us. So really proud of it.
Excellent. So you guys heard that. There's a full kitchen here. So come on out, have a beer, have a glass of wine, enjoy some delicious food here in Columbus, North Carolina. We've got a gorgeous dog-friendly patio. As you can see, it just opens up from the garage door right out here into the gorgeous sunlight. Come out and support these guys, and we hope to see you in person next year for the 10th annual Try On Beer Fest.